Ghazali, give us the very latest on what's happening right now at the Hindon Air Base, where Sheikh Hasina continues to be housed, even as she awaits the verdict or the latest on her asylum requests.
See, the UK or diplomatic sources who look after the asylum thing in UK are suggesting that perhaps when somebody has to apply for an asylum, they need to get into the first safe country, land there, and then apply for an asylum from there. So going by that logic or law, perhaps Sheikh Hasina has landed in the first safe country here in India, and then she has applied for the asylum. But how long will that asylum process will take, or by when her file will be cleared and then she will be allowed to get into United Kingdom, is not known yet, and that is not being shared by the UK authorities as of now, considering the fact that Sheikh Hasina is not just an ordinary citizen. She is the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She is a political figure and a controversial one, considering what all has transpired in Bangladesh in the last 48 hours. So as of now, what we understand from this given situation is that since the Foreign Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has made a statement in the Parliament updating about what is happening in Bangladesh, how India helped Sheikh Hasina to get back in India yesterday, and it perhaps means that now she will be staying in India till her clearance, till she gets a clearance from UK for her asylum. So as of now, there is no development at the Hindon Air Base. She landed here yesterday, and we are being told that she is still there. And unless and until we get some information that whether her file has moved or has been cleared, till then she is likely to stay at the Hindon Air Base.
Appreciate you joining us, Mohammad Ghazali, to give us the latest on that. To take this story forward, Anil Trigunayat, former ambassador, David Bergman, British investigative journalist and former editor of Netra News based out of Bangladesh, joins me on this broadcast. Ambassador Trigunayat, to you first. The update that we were getting right now from Bangladesh is that the police is nowhere to be found. It is students who seem to be doing some of the work that the administration should be doing, raising questions once again that was this a color revolution as well, because some of the demands of the students was met. So what is it that they were protesting?
Well, I think that there is a much deeper issues, especially the economic condition, the employment, and then the trigger became the quota system or the reservations that were introduced. And there was a deep-seated discontent against the former Prime Minister. And therefore, there are several reasons for that, apart from some other conspiracy theories of various other countries axing their grind in such a situation. But the fact, as your reporter has mentioned, the situation seems to be coming under control. And the fact that the students themselves are now trying to clean up the places or something, whatever mess has been created, is actually a good sign. I mean, that means they care for the country, and that is very important in that sense. And now the fact is that currently there is no government in place except the army rule. And once the government is made, and when the people are talking that there could be perhaps Muhammad Yusuf has coming from Paris, and he will be the accepted leader to all sides, and what kind of a composition of the interim government will be there, what will be the mandate, how long will it take to conduct the elections, whether there will be a position will be ripe to conduct the elections within 6 months or whatever time frame is decided by the government of the day, interim or otherwise. So I think that there are a lot of balls up in the air, and we'll have to see how things plays out. But I think that we can't just say that everything is under control at the moment. There are definitely signs. There are definitely some reports, of certain disconcerting events that are happening there.
David Bergman, how long do you think this transition for Bangladesh could take from the army right now in control to the formation of the interim government, given the fact that Muhammad Yunus is a name that has already been doing the rounds and he has accepted to be the advisor of any potential interim government? So how long do you think this transition could take for Bangladesh?
I think that it is important that the interim government is set up as soon as possible, and my understanding is that the military authorities are working on that. Yunus is outside the country at the moment, so that is causing some level of complexity, I imagine. I'm not entirely sure whether Yunus has actually formally accepted. I know that the students' leaders have announced that he should be, and he should be in that position of chief advisor or head of the interim government, but he hasn't subsequently actually formally said that that is what he wants to do. So I think we should wait a little bit. Clearly, there are law and order problems that have emanated from the time when Sheikh Hasina left the country. You must remember that effectively the police authorities in Bangladesh were involved in killing 200 to 300 people over recent days. And they effectively scalped and left the scene as soon as Sheikh Hasina left the country, concerned about what might happen to them. And so that was one of the reasons why law and order declined. There was effectively no law enforcement entity ensuring safety.
But
hopefully
David,
that is going to, yes.
I also will get my colleague Saurabh, who is standing at the Indo-Bangladesh border. But before that, David, I want to ask you this, that the complexion of the interim government itself is likely to raise several questions, because it is expected to be largely comprised of BNP as well as Jamaat-e-Islami elements, and that raises questions about its legitimacy as well. How do you see the complexion of this interim or any interim government which may not have Awami League presence at all?
I mean, I don't know where you get the information that the BNP and the Jamaat people will be part of the government. Interim or caretaker governments in the past in Bangladesh have been comprised of civil society elements, highly respected independent individuals like Muhammad Yunus. So one at the moment certainly expects that that will be the future composition of the interim government. I don't think people will accept if there are political party elements within the interim government.
Okay,
I don't think it's going to happen. So I think that's really inaccurate information as far as I'm aware.
Okay, let's get in Saurabh Gupta, who's joining us live from the Indo-Bangladesh border, the very long border that India shares with Bangladesh. There's been very significant concerns related to security, related to humanitarian crisis. Even as things stand right now, Saurabh, give us an update. How fortified is the border right now? The BSF has been on high alert since yesterday. Fill us in with what do you see on ground?
Well, let me give you an example of what's taken place today, and this should sum up as to what the situation is. The BSF's Director General was here, met with officers on the ground. Now, very rarely do the top officers make visits. They do make regular visits, but this one was also in the backdrop of what's going on in that country, which is just a few kilometers, not even a few kilometers, just a few meters. You can see that mural of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, perhaps one of the very few surviving murals, because we've seen the kind of violence that has been taking place and those shocking images of even Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue being brought down. And that, many believe, is the color that this violence has taken. Also, we've been speaking to people who've been crossing the border, and we must report what they've been saying. And what they've been saying is that if they are in the minority community in Bangladesh, which is basically the Hindu community, there is a certain sense of insecurity and fear given what has happened in the last, since Sheikh Hasina's departure from Bangladesh. And there have been reports of attacks on temples and also targeted attacks. Now, there have also been some very encouraging pictures. For example, in some places, the majority community in Bangladesh, the Muslim community, have come out and defended temples. But largely, if you speak to people, they will tell you that there is a sense of insecurity amongst the minority community as far as, the current situation is concerned. And therefore, this is a situation that will take some time to heal. There is hurt in that, situation there. We've spoken to multiple people who've been crossing the border today, and all of them have shared that concern, except perhaps very rare few. And that is one of the concerns that remains. Now, apart from that, let me tell you, we know what we were talking about this interim government. Yes, so far there have been now signs that things, perhaps the students are doing their bit to try and clean up. But in the absence of a government, in the absence of effective law enforcement, it is a challenge for, organizations like those who've been leading the protests. Now, Sheikh Hasina is in India, and therefore there is also that part of that, whole equation that's there. But again, Dhaka is just around 300 kilometers from here down this road. Joshua, another major city, is just about 40 kilometers. And what we are being told, and by people who were coming in, that the violence took place not very far from here yesterday. So, yes, things may have calmed down for a bit, but there is a sense of insecurity, there is a sense of fear, and that is something that the interim government will definitely have to address on an urgent footing.
Indeed, appreciate you joining us, Saurabh, on that. And let me take that to Ambassador Trigunayat, which is this sense of vulnerability that the minority community is facing, and that was voiced as well by the External Affairs Minister on the floor of the House in this statement, that how Hindus are being targeted, their businesses are being targeted. Ambassador Trigunayat, this phase of flux, do you see this? How long do you see this continuing in Bangladesh, especially with the return of Khaleda Zia and her party along with Jamaat-e-Islami?
Well, I think that this fear or insecurity of the Bangladeshi government in power, as you mentioned, if the Khaleda Zia government comes to power or Jamaat-e-Islami comes to power, then the little bit of a fear that Hindus community in that country, which is about 8% of the population, is quite real. But at the same time, I remember I have been there during a period of Rashad when I served in Bangladesh. There were certain issues and certain complaints about people being the Hindus, being persecuted. That's been going. In fact, General Rashad himself only used to talk about 10 koti manush. He will not even acknowledge those 2 crores. But as many of my friends over the time have said, that generally the Bangladeshis, an average Bangladeshi, is not communal in nature. I mean, that is something that is the saving grace. And I hope that perpetuates.
No, but it's not about the average Bangladeshi, sir. It's about these radical elements that are likely to be emboldened, that are likely to be empowered. Khaleda Zia has already been released from prison, and her party has known to have a certain position and is known to embolden and empower Islamists. That's the fear, that's the vulnerability that I was mentioning. And let me take that to David Bergman as well. David Bergman, how do you see this insecurity and the flux impacting minorities, especially the Hindus in Bangladesh?
Obviously, it's extremely important for the Hindu community to feel safe and to be kept safe. And that must be an absolute priority of the current army who's kind of in power now and any new interim government that takes place. Absolutely crucial. Very important for Bangladesh. Now, I think it's important to distinguish Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP. It is true that they have at times been willing to persecute, or not necessarily persecute, but not safeguard. BNP has not been willing to safeguard minorities as well as they can in the past. That was 15 years ago now. A lot has happened since then, so you do hope the BNP would have learned a lesson and may take a different position. I mean, the Jamaat-e-Islami is very unlikely to be...
But we are seeing those incidents, right, since yesterday. The student protests quickly unfolded and into targeting of Hindus, didn't it? In a matter of hours. No, that's why I'm asking you this.
It's true there have been some incidents in which Hindus have been targeted, and that's very worrying. Obviously, when law enforcement officers are no longer on the scene, you do get rivalries and communal elements that will attack the Hindu community because there's no one safeguarding them. That will happen in Bangladesh and in other countries, and that's obviously very concerning. But I don't think it's on a large scale. I think you are exaggerating it, and I don't think it should be the prime concern that of your program. I think that what you are missing, and I think it's so important that I think your viewers understand this, is why Sheikh Hasina resigned and left her prime ministership in Bangladesh. That was because there were huge popular protests against the fact that the Sheikh Hasina had allowed her law enforcement authorities to kill up to 300 people over a course of 2 weeks. And that was the reason why there was at one point demand of people from all walks of life that Sheikh Hasina should resign. The quota movement was the start of it, But the quota movement, because of the response of the Awami League government, which was shooting and killing lots of protesters and passers-by and support and students, because of that response of the Awami League government, the people then responded in a way that you would expect them to do, which was to demand that the government hold those people to account. But the government said, no, it's not, we're not responsible. They denied any responsibility.
Okay.
That angered people
David,
even
a
more.
lot of this
And there
we
was
did cover yesterday, and there's been rolling coverage of the Bangladesh crisis. The events that led to Sheikh Hasina's very sudden exit from Bangladesh, how she came, she fled, all of that we've covered in great detail on NDTV here on every aspect. So what we are now dissecting and talking about is the next phase, and that's what I want to ask Ambassador Trigunath as well, that all parties, all different groups seem to have come together around Muhammad Yunus's name, and they want him to actually be an advisor. They were even asking him to lead the interim government. How much do you think will that make a change? He is a moderate voice, he is a Nobel laureate. How do you see the interim government, no matter how long it lasts, under Muhammad Yunus's?
I think that it is important to understand that Muhammad Yunus is a respected figure in the country, being a Nobel laureate and being a grassroots worker, starting his Grameen Bank and all that, and being associated. And of course, he has been very critical of Sheikh Hasina, and he has even been imprisoned during her time. Several charges have been slapped on him. So he becomes a natural choice for a very large number of protesting people and the other political parties. So there is no doubt about it. How much the Awami League also is a significant political party, even though their leader has left the country, how would they continue to support this, because they have not been consulted, as far as I know, in the last meeting held by the general. So this would be something, but he's generally definitely acceptable. He's a non-controversial figure in that sense. And I believe that he can wear it around for some time. Now, the composition of the interim government is also equally important. There could be technocrats or civil society groups, not necessarily the politicians from different parties. That will vitiate the whole issue. And what kind of a mandate this interim government will have with regard to the elections, how soon can they create conditions for conducting the elections, is to be seen. In the meantime, what we are looking at is that the students mainly needs to return to the universities and hospitals rather than staying in the streets.
Okay.
Because that a small kind of an incident can once again trigger the problem. So I think that in such situations, as you know, a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot
Absolutely.
of rumors go around, which can cause a major problem.